Welcome. You're tuning in to DataVaultAlliance's podcast, Unlocking the Vault with Dan Linstedt. I'm your host, Trisha McCain, and for this recording, we're switching things up a bit. We have a fantastic lineup of guests joining us today who all specialize in data warehousing, data modeling, data engineering, business intelligence, and the like. Basically, all things data that your data-loving heart could wish for. Please join me in welcoming Kent Graziano, Scott Ambler, Dale Anderson, Kevin Marshbank, Veronika Durgin, Francesco Puppini, Bruce McCartney, Noel Cruz, Dan Linstedt, Sanjay Pandey, and Cynthia Meyersohn. It's a huge list of guests, so welcome everyone. I'm so excited you guys are here. Just having so many people gathered here in one spot, that's really exciting, and I think we're going to have a great conversation today. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into today's main topic. It's kind of a big one, so let's start it off. It's 2023, and we're swimming in buzzwords with data mesh, decentralization, data lakehouse, etc. What's actually the next big thing that we should take seriously? Are we forgetting something obvious or leaving anything behind? Kent Graziano is our first guest to weigh in. Kent has over 25 years experience in designing data warehousing and data analytics solutions. He's the author of the Data Warrior blog, a guest speaker for this year's Worldwide Data Vault Consortium, and holds an 8th Dan Black Belt and title Grandmaster in Taekwondo. So basically, if anyone gets out of line, I'm sending him after you guys. Kent, what do you think? What about all these buzzwords, and what are we forgetting, or are we missing anything?
Well, yeah, it's like you said, we've got all these new ones coming up, the most recent ones being data mesh and data lakehouse, really. But there's still a lot of other stuff out there that's going on right now too, like data ops. That's a big one that I've been involved in. Of course, Data Vault. We're here at the DataVaultAlliance. That's still out there, and that's part of all of these things. But data ops, and the one thing I want to make sure that we don't leave behind is agile and agile concepts. That doesn't get lost in this mix. I almost said mesh, but I meant mess of data terminology that's going on. Data mesh is kind of like way out there in the forefront, and everybody's talking about data mesh and decentralization approaches. And Dan and I had a discussion about this probably a year or two ago. It's like, it's not a lot of new, it's just some new terminology, the idea of decentralizing your data environment, and distributing the work out across the organization. We did that. We've been there, we've done it, now we're back and we're doing it slightly different. The thing that's not in that list that you gave me, though, that I think is really important that we do continue to talk about is artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? Because that gets more to what we're trying to do with the data, where data mesh and data lakehouse, data warehousing, even that the term data warehousing, centralized, decentralized, that's more about the architecture and how we're organizing the data. But the thing we really need to be talking about is, what are we doing with the data? That's the thing we don't want to forget. The old, let's not get wrapped around in the shiny new thing, right? Data mesh, and just be talking about data mesh all the time. It's like, question that comes up in the data vault world all the time is, when should you or should you not use a data vault? And the same question needs to be asked in the data when we talk about data mesh, is when should you or should you not use a data mesh? And all of these things go back to, well, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And can we get back to that? That's the thing we don't want to ever forget, is what's the problem we're trying to solve? And as professionals in the IT world, a lot of times we think too much about a technical problem we're trying to solve, and we really need to be thinking about what's the business problem we're trying to solve, right? Whether it's a data mesh or a data lakehouse or a data warehouse or some other data thing. What did we have? We had data swamps, we had data rivers, we have data ponds, things like that have come up over the last 10 years or so. But we don't want to forget about the end goal. That's really the important part. So how are we going to enable better business decisions and data-driven organizations and digital transformation? And even digital transformation, another big phrase that goes in all of this is, why are we doing digital transformation? Why are we moving to the cloud? Is it really the right thing for our organization? Is it going to help us solve some of the problems that we're trying to solve as an organization? And making sure people keep that in the forefront, right? That it's, if we think we need artificial intelligence and we think we need machine learning, and maybe it's powered by a data vault, or it's powered by a data vault inside of a data mesh that's operationalized with data ops. So I tried to say all the buzzwords in one sentence. But what's the point, right? Why are we doing it? That's a lot of work. And we do reinvent our terminology in this industry about every 5 to 10 years. There's some new words come out. So really, to my mind, it's like we need to continually focus on, what's the business benefit? Why are we doing these things? Rather than what the buzzword of the day is.
I think that's a great, a good, well-rounded answer. Thank you, Kent. We appreciate that.
Sure.
Our next guest is Scott Ambler. He is also a speaker at this year's Worldwide Data Vault Consortium. He is a consulting methodologist and on the advisory board member at the Trinity IDC Incorporated. Scott, how about you? What do you think about the buzzwords, about whether we're forgetting something or leaving something behind? What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm with Kent. I think asking why is, why are we doing this is a fundamentally important question. Other than, of course, to polish our resumes, but because that's always a valid reason to play with new tech. But sadly, but yeah. So I think the one I want to focus on, though, and I would argue it's probably not it's sort of buzzwordy, but it's not, is artificial intelligence, and particularly machine learning. And the reason why I'm saying that is, first of all, it's one heck of an opportunity for data professionals. It's particularly one heck of an opportunity for anybody that currently has a data vault in place, because the key challenge in machine learning is data. Well, one of the key challenges is data quality. And because it's a garbage in, garbage out type of a situation with AI, but on steroids. So if your organization is suffering from data quality now, you're going to blow your minds when you start doing machine learning, because what used to be a data quality problem that might have taken you a couple of years to suffer from is now a data quality problem that turns your AI into a raving racist after about a week and a half. If it takes that long, probably a day and a half is more accurate. So you've got some serious challenges if you have data quality problems, and most organizations do. So it was interesting. I was at an AI conference a few months ago, and about a third of the speakers, particularly the ones that were talking about, we're doing this machine learning project in some insurance company in corporate America type of a talk. About a third of the speakers at some point got to the point where they said, the biggest challenges that we ran into was data quality. And if you don't have good data quality, you're in serious trouble. You need to do something about that. Good luck. And that was like the level of advice they gave. It was like, yeah, data quality is a serious problem. Good luck with that. So I would highly suggest that if you're not already on this path, then get very, very, very serious about data quality now. Stop pushing it off, because that's a multi-year problem. So if you want to start playing around with artificial intelligence today, you probably can't, because of your data quality problems. And this is usually artificial intelligence projects have a phenomenally high failure rate, and it's almost always because of data quality, and or lack of data quality, to be accurate. And that's fixing your data quality tends to be a very serious problem, so a very serious challenge. So I would get on that right away because I think artificial intelligence is going to be the thing for this decade. And take it seriously, it's coming. And actually, and what's also interesting about in the AI community is there's a raging debate at the present moment of whether or not it's too late for corporate America to get involved. So the basic thing is, if you haven't already been doing AI for a while, chances are you're so far behind the competitors that are doing AI, and because of the long tail of data quality, usually, that you're probably in serious trouble, and you might not be able to catch up, just because of the changing pace that we see with the organizations that are doing AI properly.
Next speaker is Dale Anderson. He's a data solutions architect, co-founder and CTO of Intelligent Data Cloud, also a speaker at this year's Worldwide Data Vault Consortium. Dale, what do you think about the AI thing? Do you agree?
Well, yes, and there's a lot more to it, and both my compatriots there brought up AI, and there's big dialogue out there with Chat GPT and GPT-4 and all this stuff, and I want to get to that a little bit, but let's talk back on our main topic. I think AI is great, and we need to talk about that. We can't ignore it. And to answer your postulation, Scott, I don't think companies are behind, because I think we're still very, very early in AI in general. But that said, we'll put a pin on that for a minute. I think what happens, and I've seen this so many times over my career, is that shiny object really distracts companies and business people and IT people, both alike. And they want that easy button. They talk a lot about, being data driven and all this good stuff, and all these terms come into play, and a lot of times they don't know what the terms even mean. So it's very important to differentiate the terminology and separate reality from vendor marketing, because there's a lot of terms that come from strictly vendor marketing, and they're very good at it. But then there's some things that are actually real strategies for doing things. And I would say data mesh, for example, is one of those that's a real strategy for complex, wide-ranging enterprise systems with data everywhere. Data mesh can really help codify and correlate data, and it works well with Data Vault. But a data lakehouse, that's just another word for a data warehouse, data lake, whatever you want to call it. It's really about bringing all of the data together from many systems into a raw storage, and then processing that data for the business. Because fundamentally, it's not about the data, it's about the business. And we talk a lot about that with Data Vault. Because fundamentally, to be data-driven, you need to be business-driven. And companies don't care about the data. They think they do, but they really don't. What they care about, and there's a lot of chatter right now on LinkedIn. I don't know if you've seen it, and our friend Bill Inman has jumped in on some of this, and I was reading some of what he says. So this isn't me talking, this is Bill. Customers want three things. They want to make money, they want to get new customers, and they want to keep the customers they have. Now, I think our job is to figure out the right way for them to get the data and the business intelligence and the AI and the ML to them so that they can make better decisions. And fundamentally, I think that's really what it's all about. And of course, I'm a big one on this. We can't forget the data model. I see so many projects out there fail because they don't even talk about the data model. They just talk about processing data through this wonderful architecture, data lakehouse, whatever it is, and they don't even talk about the model. And there's multiple models involved, right? From the acquisition through the ingestion to the curation and then preparing it for business consumption. So it's not so much just about the when you do it, that's obvious now. And it's not just about the what it is. We all know kind of what it is we need. And we're talking now today about the why. But I always like to talk about the how. Okay, when it's all said and done, once we understand the when, the what, and the why, then the next question should be how. How do we do this? And this is, I think, where Data Vault really comes into fore with a well-defined architecture, methodology, and data model. So to come back to the AI point, okay, artificial intelligence, that suggests something, doesn't it? It suggests that the computer is thinking. And I don't agree with that philosophy at all. It is machine learning, it's text processing, and it's automation, really. Chat GPT and GPT-4, it is a conversational language engine. It's automation for text. It's great for people who want to write stuff and formulate stuff. And I heard about Bloomberg's new financial model. That could be great, but the outcome is only as good as the model, right? Even though the model might improve, but it's going to have problems. What the reality is Chat GPT or GPT-4 cannot think. It cannot think for itself, which is what artificial intelligence implies. So I like to use the word simulated intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence, because that's what we're doing with computers, right? We're simulating the thinking process. But I don't even think ChatGPT is that either. What I think it is textual intelligence. It's really just that first level of processing, the automation of, and it's fantastic. What it can do is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. And that's why I think, Scott, it's really just the beginning. So if your company hasn't started working on A yet, you're not too late. In fact, those that are doing it now might be too early, but they're pioneers. So let's have it. Let's go after it. I think it is the future. We can't avoid it, and we should embrace it. And I hope that the Data Vault community will help steer the way.
Thank you, Dale. We appreciate it. Next up is Kevin Marshbank. He is a principal consultant at the Data Vault shop. Over 20 years of experience designing and building high-performance transactional and business intelligence solutions. Also a speaker at this year's Worldwide Data Vault Consortium. Kevin, what do you think?
Oh, goodness. Lots of great points. And, buzzwords have been buzzwords for a long time. And like a lot of people have already said on here, we have gone through ebbs and flows of centralizing things, decentralizing things, and thrown lots of different words around that, throughout the decades. And what it always comes back to for me is, we have a lot of best practices. In fact, Data Vault 2.0 is a collection of best practices that have been codified. And I think if we just all focused on doing our jobs better and do the things we already know what to do, then we're going to produce this well-formed data model. We already know how to do that, and if we focus on training those people that are coming in to do that as well, and remind them the purpose of what we do, then all of these other things become easier. But it's kind of, I have these conversations a lot and see this happen a lot with organizations throughout the years where, the buzzwords are really attractive because the executives are not getting what they want, right? They want to find something to solve their issue, and somebody's selling it to them. A vendor selling them something new, a new word that's going to fix something. And the fact of the matter is, if they had a longer term view of what they're trying to produce, we're trying to get quick hits, and so buzzwords really catalyze us with quick hits. And it's kind of like with our kids as they're growing up. They're egocentric, and everything is about them as they grow up through, youth and into teenager years. And we're trying to get them to move into an ethnocentric view where they're thinking about other people so that they're actually participating in society and providing value to more than just themselves. And that's, the case also with organizations. If they take a longer term view and they think about how this impacts everybody else, then you're going to get a better impact. You're going to start thinking about the model and caring about taxonomy and how this impacts the entire enterprise versus those conversations where I can just create this one thing real quickly by hand that'll solve my problem. Well, yes, but what about the enterprise? That's somebody's going to have to rebuild that later, or it's not going to impact other areas of the business. And I think that's one of the big things is, and I don't know how to quantify it as far as a next big thing, but really it's getting that enterprise focus that we've been trying to work on instead of, of course, vendors are always going to be very tantalizing with their newest, greatest thing. But, that's one of the big things I see over and over again. I think moving, to touch on AI, one of those things, trying not to be too cynical with all these, words. Of course, they all have value in trying to solve things. And I think if we look at logic, for instance, when we study logic, one of the first things is defining your definitions. What are we talking about? What do each of these things mean? And we can go all the way back to what does a data warehouse mean? And we have definitions around that now, but that doesn't mean everybody understands that and it's talking about the same thing. Like when you talk about an operational data store, what does that mean? Oh, we have an ODS, or we have a data warehouse. What does that mean? And defining those things. So if we come to AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, what does that mean? And a small quick story is I did a project with IBM Watson on healthcare data, and that was AI. That's early AI, right? And so we have IBM Watson come in. We do start this project, and guess what? The man behind the curtain. It's people running regression models by hand, pulling data, putting them through regression models. It's not this, box that's figuring everything out for you. And I think people don't realize there's a lot of humans involved in trying to keep machine learning and AI doing what it should be doing. And to think that you're going to just throw the humans out of the factory, right? You're not going to replace the thinking behind everything. It's kind of like with data automation. I think data automation is still, a huge thing. There's so much grunt work. AI is going to take care of, machine learning is going to take care of some of this grunt work. But as I always tell people with data automation, it's great and it's going to take care of 80% of the work, but you still have to have a thinking person behind these things. Otherwise, you'll automate shooting yourself in the foot. And I think back to what Scott said about being behind the curve, I do think that if you have a well-defined model and you are trying to get ahead of the game, there's things you need to test with AI. Just like we've been able to do this for years with regression models and things like that as well. But I think you're also going to see a lot of people hit a concrete wall because they trusted the AI, and they're going to run into making some very poor decisions very quickly, and they're going to destroy their enterprise because they trusted it too much, just like they've done with a lot of other things over the years, and putting too much trust into some computer to make all these decisions. And it's just like you've seen the call from Elon Musk and other people, hey, let's take a pause on this AI thing. It's running too fast and we're not putting enough controls in place. That's my biggest concern with AI, is people trusting it too much. There are still humans around involved. They're putting these things together, and humans make mistakes. And if there's not enough controls in place, and that comes back to data quality, but also controls to make sure things are coming through correctly. These are all best practices that we've known about for decades.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And,
absolutely.
We really appreciate it. Veronika Durgin is our next guest speaker. She is the Vice President of Data at Saks. She's had over 20 years of experience in database administration, data engineering, platform architecture, data modeling, and analytics and insights. She is also certified Data Vault practitioner and a Snowflake data superhero. So Veronika, welcome. Can you share your thoughts with us?
Thank you, Tricia. And I know every time you're like, oh, you have to pronounce it this way, and then you like think about it and say it wrong anyway. So it doesn't matter. It's okay.
I'm so sorry.
It's really hard to go after all these amazing people. They kind of covered everything, but I'm going to piggyback on kind of what Kevin was saying and take it in a slightly different direction. First of all, does everybody feel cognitive overload? Because I do. There's so much going at us at the same time, and then we get a whiplash. Oh, X is gonna die, and then the next day, long live X. SQL is done. Nobody's using SQL. Oh wait, everybody has to learn SQL. Data modeling. Who needs data modeling? Oh my God, data modeling is back. It's the greatest thing, which by the way, I think is still the greatest thing. And nobody should kill it, but I'm sure they'll be killing it, again and again. But what I think we're leaving behind is actually humans. If you think about it, everything that we do is about helping humans. right? All the tech that we have is to augment capability of a human. Human is also very lazy. So we look for these like quick things that'll help us so we don't have to do anything. But kind of like, and then we all get caught up in this excitement of a new toy, right? And I'll just give you an example just for giggles. So I was watching, by the way, don't judge ML algorithm of Instagram. It popped up Cardi B on Jimmy Kimmel. And she was saying how she got this Lamborghini truck. And he says, wait, but you don't drive. She's like, so I take pictures with it. So we get these shiny toys, amazing platforms, ML, AI, Chat GPT. We don't know how to use them. So it's a good thing she uses it for great things, great pictures, but could also take it for a ride and hurt ourselves, right? So we have to think about humans, how we can bring everybody along, right? And actually, Scott, you were saying that if you're not on board with AI, you're behind. I don't think so. I always wait until service pack 1. I'll let others test things out, fix all the bugs, and then when we're ready as an organization, we're ready as a team, we transition and start using those tools. So data culture is important, right? Data literacy. Being data informed is important, knowing how to use that data. What is it in front of you? A machine spits out something, and some of you already mentioned that. Do you actually know? Do you have enough knowledge to know whether it's correct or not? Right? And the other buzzword that hasn't been mentioned yet is data contracts, which kind of going back, I was like, but wasn't EDI data contracts? But what old is new again. So we're back in the circle, and then we're going to kill it probably next year, only for it to come back as a zombie.
Thank you so much for weighing in, Veronika. We really appreciate it. Francesco Puppini is our next guest. He is a business intelligence, data modeling, and data warehousing specialist. He invented a data structure called the Unified Star Schema. He is an R&D engineer for Astrato Analytics, I believe. Francesco, welcome. What do you think? Tell us a bit about what you think with these buzzwords.
Yeah, hi, hello everyone. So yeah, I'm not a fan of buzzwords. I really don't like it because it sounds like everyone wants to say these words to say, yeah, this is the new thing. And it's happened a lot of times and it's happening again now. So my recommendation is to, yeah, you should embrace the change. But at the same time, you should also keep in mind all the history that we have, all the theory, all the knowledge that we have acquired until now. So when something new appears, you should not suddenly throw everything away because you have now Chat GPT or whatever will come next, but rather embrace the change, but also stick to the classic. So for example, I'm now working in this company Astrato, and we are developing a new tool. And yeah, we are going to use Chat GPT for a few things that are actually done very well by the tool. But we are also using the traditional things. In particular, we are using graph theory, which not many people talk about. It's definitely not a buzzword, but it helps us. It's useful, so we use it. So what I recommend, yeah, it's to keep in mind exactly that we should know what we do and not necessarily focus on how we do it. So the buzzwords are usually focused on how we do things. But as most people already said, what we do, we are serving business. We are delivering tools that help having insights from data. So for example, in DataVault, I like a lot, and I was attracted by the fact that you have a very clear distinction between what the data is, raw data, and then how interpret it. So these are principles that are helping us, and there's no technology that is changing the good old concepts. So learn the new, but keep the connection with the theory. That is the most important.
Thank you so much for sharing. Bruce McCartney, he is a senior data vault architect, another speaker at this year's Worldwide Data Vault Consortium, expert in latest data warehousing and business intelligence technology, and teaches DataVault 2.0 certification classes with Performance G2. Bruce, welcome. Tell us what you think.
Yes, I was muted. Sorry. Thank you.
That's
Thanks for having me. And Really interesting discussion here. And one of the things that attracts me about DataVault is the fact that it's kind of data agnostic in terms of technology and buzzwords. I think we have a fair bit of insulation in that we have an architecture and a way of doing things that really doesn't require a certain product here and there. Because I think the vendors tend to play things up a lot. And one of the things that I've been working on, I've been looking at AI for quite a while now, and I'm very, very interested in this, in the way that we can use large language modules in order to capture meaning. And once we've done that meaning, I think Chat GPT 4, I've been playing with that a little bit. And what it seems to be able to do is understand better what it's been taught. So it has to obviously read or consume this data, which it turns into meaning, which then it can translate into other languages. So one of the things that I thought would be interesting is I posed your question, the question that we're talking about this morning, to Chat GPT 4 to see what the answer that it got was. And I thought it was actually pretty darn good. And I ended up, I published it on Medium, which I don't usually use that much, just to see what that would look like. But basically, I gave it a prompt to do that, and it came up with a couple of things that I thought were pretty good. The next best thing, it talked about how we use these fancy names, and the next best thing may lie in re-imaging how we collaborate and communicate around data, less about buzzword and more about practice. That one resonates with me. And then it talked about decentralization and saying that, there's pros and cons to both, and the real breakthrough could come through striking a balance between the two and creating a hybrid approach that combines the best of both worlds. Again, that seems like a pretty reasonable approach to things. And then the last one was the Data Lakehouse, talked about a fancy name about it. True innovation may lie in learning from past mistakes and refining existing solutions, rather than leaping headfirst into the latest architectural fad. Again, wow, that I think is pretty wise advice from Chat GPT. So it's getting this advice obviously from what it's been fed. So what I think the challenge remains is for us to feed these language modules with what is a data vault, how do you use it, how can you use it? And that's what I've been trying to do with my copy of Chat GPT. I've got all the concepts defined, and I'm letting it summarize it and then asking it questions about DataVault that it's really capable of taking those meanings and turning them into the language that I asked for. So it can create tables and all that other stuff, but it also understands what I'm telling it, as long as I can tell it in language that is not ambiguous. So what you mean by what you say, I think, becomes very important in that. And I think the thing that I take away from this discussion really is that there's lots of buzzwords that people don't really know what they mean. And what we as professionals need to do is try to step away from those and really clarify what we mean when we say data governance, for instance. And DAMA has a really wonderful way of expressing what data governance is. And I think DataVault has a wonderful way of expressing how to do data warehousing and make better decisions with your data. So we're arguing a lot, in our projects about trying to move from, a percentage of art and science between what implementing a data vault is, and trying to, my mission, I guess, would be to squeeze down and increase the amount of science involved and reduce the amount of art, so that we get a more consistent and valuable delivery to our business intelligence customers. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. That was interesting hearing about the what the AI thought of all of that.
Yeah,
crazy.
It was. I am constantly stunned by how well the understanding of this is being converted into meaning into a language module. There's several out there, and I'm not advocating people just stop thinking. But I think what Dale, you were saying, that it's more than just a text generator. It's actually understands the meaning associated with that through collectively scouring all kinds of input. So what my thought is let's give it better input so that we get better output.
Yeah. Can I just jump in on that? Because I think this Absolutely. Is a really good observation. So what's happened is, Chat GPT-4 is significantly better than GPT-3, more data, it's been trained on all this sort of stuff. But the real issue here is it's augmenting Bruce. So Bruce has a clue. he asked a good question. He probably reprompt. You probably went through several iterations of, tell me more type things, right? And Bruce knows what he's listening to, right? So he asked a good question. He knows when he's getting a decent answer or not, and he can act on it. But if Bruce didn't have a clue, then you could get GPT-4 could have given you complete nonsense, and because you don't have a clue, you wouldn't know. And then you'd go off, you'd follow, whatever GPT-4 told you, and who knows what happened from there. And I think this is the crux of it, is that we're using these. It's just one more tool, and we're using it to augment. The people are using to augment, and they're more effective potentially more effective as a result, if they know what they're doing.
Let's go to our next guest, Noel Cruz. He's a technical analyst at Optum Technology Incorporated. He's got over 20 years experience of healthcare technology, and he's also a speaker at this year's Worldwide Data Vault Consortium. Go ahead, Noel. What do you think?
Thank you, Tricia. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and ride on what everyone else has been saying. Kent mentioned early on knowing our why, and I agree. For example, why do people drive on parkways and park on driveways? No, that's not having to do anything with data, but some questions we may never be able to answer. But one thing that I've noticed in my research is that data decision velocity is on the rise. And Gartner claims that about 95% of decisions based on data can at least be partially automated. Now, that's a little scary to me, automating decisions. What's the impact of that? Well, soon we'll probably see a greater focus on decision innovation, which will require new roles to manage it: chief decision officer, decision engineer, so on and so forth. That's kind of one of the side effects, I think, of AI and ML learning with data, right? Scott mentioned data quality. So with the rise of synthetic and derivative data for training models, issues will arise from that? And what I mean by synthetic data is that sometimes because of privacy laws or missing data, the need to train AI models, we may not have enough data available to process the information that we need. So we're going to see AI create data that we can use to train our models and so on. What is the impact of that? I think it kind of ties back to what Kevin said. We may end up automating shooting ourselves in the foot. I like that. I think that's a good quote. You ought to tweet that, Kevin. And it's I don't know, where am I going with that? It's scary what AI can do. And, Bruce mentioned that, let's give AI better input so we can get better output. But if we're producing data artificially, how do we know the quality of that data? In, addressing what Scott was mentioning about data quality. So, and finally, I kind of want to tie into what Francesco said. And he mentioned, learn the new, but keep the connection with the theory. You'll see many times in many professions, many disciplines, that, the best players, say, for example, in basketball, will always go back to the basics. And I think with all of the emerging technology, all of the AI stuff, all of this data mesh, data fabric, so on and so forth, if we don't keep ourselves grounded in the basics, we're going to lose ourselves in the future. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Noel. I appreciate it. All right, next up is Dan Linstedt. Of course, Dan is the Data Vault inventor, founder, CEO of DataVaultAlliance. He's an author, a speaker, an instructor, and specializes in data warehousing, business intelligence. Welcome, Dan. Let's hear from you. What do you think?
Well, I think a lot of good points have been given already in terms of what we're seeing along the technological space and what we're seeing along the AI space. But I can't help but hear a nagging voice in my head. The business has as long as I can remember, been saying better, faster, cheaper. One of the things the businesses has never said is at what cost. And I think that just really hits it all home, right? And this whole idea of better, faster, cheaper is good until people start paying the price or until something bad happens, right? Now, when you talk about AI, it's just like, well, the analogy is just like a tool in your garden, right? A bit more interesting than that, but you think about a shovel. You need a shovel to dig a hole. A shovel is just a shovel, and it can be used for good purposes or bad purposes or the purpose that it was intended to do. You know, sometimes I've used a shovel to move dirt, which isn't the right tool. Sometimes I've needed a wheelbarrow, which is the right tool, unless there's too much dirt. So choosing the right tool for the right task is really what I'm getting at. I think AI is the same to a point. I think there is legitimate concern around AI, not necessarily, I won't say getting smart, but starting to cause problems, or as was pointed out, garbage in, garbage out, give the wrong answers, right? Or give misguided answers that only seem imperceptibly off. And I say imperceptibly because someone will look at it and go, oh, that is the right answer, and run off with it, do something with it that will then be a negative impact to someone else. But I will say the business drive to do things better, faster, cheaper is not going to go away anytime soon. I think IT is feeling that push. I think AI is feeling that push. I think innovation won't ever stop. And of course, once you invent something, you can never uninvent it. Good, bad, or indifferent, it's out there, and the ideas are now created in a form of reality. So all that to say, if I want to talk about the good side of things, and I realize I don't have much time left, but if I want to talk about the good side of things, I think AI can bring quite a bit of good as a tool. And I've talked about this before in terms of discovery. Now, a lot of people here talk about discovery of data, and that's a good practice, and that's where a lot of people go. I would like to focus on the discovery of metadata and the discovery of ontologies and relationships and taxonomies. I really think there's a huge hole there, and I think AI can assist with that. And I think AI needs to be focused in that area in order to start understanding images and video and text a lot better than we do, and how they relate to what we typically call the structured world, right? So I think there's a lot of things that can be done with AI around the metadata discovery layers. And of course, I've always said that scope is a big part of it. And anyone who knows me will tell you that training or governance is also a big part of it. And so these are some of the good things that I see. And then I'll finish this up, just sort of drop a pebble in the ocean, as it were. I wrote an article, a very short blurb on our blog, I guess it was 8 months ago now, about poison data. If you haven't read it, you should. It's about a 5-minute read for most people, maybe 2.5 minutes for some. But it raises a lot of questions. And some of those questions come from what the US military and other governments around the world are doing with AI. And it really shows what they are afraid of. Now, you want to talk about espionage and bad data going into AI. This is intentional bad data being caused by unscrupulous people to lead you to the wrong conclusion on purpose, right? Over and over again, because once an AI engine has learned something, good, bad, or indifferent, it's biased towards that direction. And we don't know how to undo it or extract it from the bias, other than to try to teach it, 100 times more positivity to try to get that out of the system, or simply flatline and restart the entire thought process in the AI engine. Now, I'm leading into some really esoterical topics that we don't have time to cover, but I really want to spur people's thinking. If you've got unscrupulous actors out there at work in your business, trying to bring your business down with poison data, and you're on the good side of things trying to use AI for the right perceptions and the right issues, you've got a serious conflict of interest. The real question then becomes, how do you know that what you're doing is right or wrong? And the answer is, sadly, you really don't. And so this is where the question of the human, how good is too good, and what rules do we need, and how does governance work? These are all questions that are unanswered when it comes to AI discovery. But and just to wrap it up, I don't think that data lakes are going anywhere, or graph databases are going anywhere, or any of these technologies are going anywhere. I do think the focus for a lot of the IT folks is in the wrong place. Yes, they need to understand how to implement all of these platforms, and cloud or not cloud, or prem or on-prem, or whatever. But I really think the focus on metadata, AI, and poison data, and understanding why AI makes the decisions it does, is probably the next big game changer in terms of what I see really shifting the tables in the industry.
Thank you so much, Dan. We really appreciate that. Our Sanjay Pandey was not able to make it this time, so we're going to go straight on to our next and final guest, Cynthia Meyersohn. Cynthia is the president and CEO of Data Rebels, the vice president of operations at DataVault North America's user group, and has over 35 years experience of working in the IT capabilities and positions. And she is also a speaker at this year's Worldwide DataVault Consortium. Cynthia, welcome.
It's always great to follow up all these brilliant folks. First of all, I want to say Dan and I did not talk about this morning, so what he last said is really a great segue, believe it or not. So I'm just going to say AI and ML, all of these models, especially Chat GPT, are created by humans, and therefore, by definition, they introduce biases and potentially censorship. So to ignore these factors, right, is to sort of put our heads in the sand. And I'm going to agree with Scott on his comments on, if you're not using AI, you're probably behind. In the intelligence community, that is definitely true. So it really depends on the industry you're in, I think. I do also need to make one correction for our audience. Francesco was not the author of Agile Ways of Working. That was written by Scott Ambler and Mark Lyons. Sorry, Francesco, I'm going to pull that accolade back.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
No worries. So one of the things I've been looking at actually is 6G. I think 6G cannot be ignored. Data is going to be coming 100 times faster from the metaverse, IoT devices with like immediate comms between the surrounding environments, devices, and consumers. And if we think about, how that's going to transform the way companies operate, how they process data, make decisions. Bernard Marr just published something on this, which I thought was really interesting. And he was suggesting how this is going to impact, for example, the way companies train their employees. All right. So with data coming 100 times faster, and with a myriad of data points that truly resemble personal behaviors, right? This enriched data is going to be available for exploitation and discovery. And it's kind of mind-blowing. Right. So this goes back to what Dan stated back in 2018 at the Worldwide DataVault Consortium, that data is simply going to grow too big to move, right? We just can't move it around. And in addition to that, I want to kind of go back to Bill Inman's definition of a data warehouse, which is, a data warehouse is a subject-oriented, integrated by business key, time variant, and non-volatile collection of data in support of management's decision-making process or in support of auditability as a system of record. And when I think about these facts and I look at technologies like Snowflake and where they're moving with their native application framework, the Unistore, hybrid tables in support of online transactional processing capabilities, it reminds me of the operational application systems that Dan built on top of the DataVault solution over a decade ago. Right. So I start to imagine this world where, utilizing a platform like Snowflake, applications developers can start to build, online transactional processing systems on top of this common foundational warehouse modeling methodology and architecture, also known as Data Vault, right? And then not only do we have optimized this foundational components, if you will, of the application systems, but we've created an analytical environment where we, number one, don't have to move the application data because it's already optimized for analytics. Two, we've moved away from this god-awful practice of using sequence keys to uniquely identify, the data within our application systems, and we're sort of returning to, or we're at least capable of returning to the sound practice, I'd say, of using, actual business keys in our designs. And third, by doing this, we basically fundamentally resolved the problems that the data analytics industry has been dealing with enabling true data integration across the enterprise at the application system level. So I see the Data Vault solution sitting perfectly, peacefully in this eye of the storm, if you will, already sitting at CMMI level 5 and surrounded by a host of automation tools, perfectly poised really for accelerating delivery to not only, address analytics from the business perspective, but also to address sound operational application system design at the enterprise integration level. I mean, I got to tell you, I'm excited. So we're in a great place, I think. And anyway, that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. We've got just a few more minutes. Does anybody else want to weigh in now that we've gone through all our guests? Anybody? Just, keep it short. Anything else anyone wants to say?
I wouldn't mind riffing on what Dan was saying a couple minutes ago. So I think he was sort of getting at this idea that, there's some technologies that end up being buzzwords, like the graph databases is a classic example. And they're not for everybody. That's a niche technology. And I'm sorry if you're a big fan of graph databases. I love graph databases. But it's a niche technology. And if I've got a problem that's well served by implementing it via a graph database, then that's awesome. Like it's fantastic. But there's a limit to the number of problems that a graph database is really going to be the thing that I would want to use. But it's great that it's there. So it's like one of those tools in your toolbox that you use every 15 years. Like a bike spoke tightener or something. Yeah, I don't use it that often, but when I need it, I really need it. And that's what a graph database is all about. And there's a lot of technologies like that. So you've got to be really good at identifying what's something that's really popular because it's some good marketing and it's really cool technology, but it's really a niche technology that's going to go as far as it's going to go, and something that's really big and here to stay. I think that some of the buzzwords I think will prove to be niche technology. Some of these big buzzwords of today will prove to be niche technologies, but it'll be 5 to 10 years before we can really detect that they are. But I suspect data mesh would go on. I love data mesh, but I suspect it's a niche. But we'll see. 5 or 10 years from now, we'll know for sure.
And I'll jump in on and rip on Dan as well, but in a positive way, I think, because I agree with you, Dan. The better, faster, cheaper note that you made, it's not going away. And actually, Dr. Shango, who coined it, it's a priority, and there are 4 of them. It's easier, better, faster, cheaper, in that order. And I think this is what we all want to strive for. And you're right about the what is at what cost, what price glory. That is a very key motivator. But this is where I think automation, code generation, DevOps, data quality, all these things that we've been talking about today play, and having a sound architecture methodology and data model that's adaptive and agile. Scott, it's got to be agile. Then I think it is possible to achieve easier, better, faster, cheaper. The mantra 10, 20 years ago was you can only get 2 of those 3. You got to pay for one somewhere. But I don't agree. I think you can achieve all of them. In fact, there's 4: easier, better, faster, cheaper. And that's where I'm hoping we're going with all this.
I think better sets you up to do the other 3.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Quality. I can't harp on that enough.
And please do continue harping on that. That is so important.
And it all goes back though to the fundamentals, and as we used to say, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater with all these new buzzwords out there, we still have to keep all the fundamentals in mind, data modeling, methodologies, CMMI, all of these things, if we want to achieve better. Because we all know that if we ignore those things, we can definitely achieve worse. And we've seen that all across the industry. Data swaps come to mind, right? It's all got to be there. We can automate it. We can do it better. We can do it faster, and ultimately we can do it cheaper, but we'll say less expensive rather than cheaper. But we do have to look at the total cost of ownership, and of course, why are we doing it? Back to that again. But we have to keep the fundamentals in mind, and hope that we all do these podcasts and things like this to sort of reinforce that and get that knowledge out there, because it's not always taught in the schools these days. Some of the fundamentals are not taught well enough, and we have to bring it back, just like the old bringing back data modeling, right? Well, I said data modeling never went anywhere. People just started ignoring it.
I really like what you say there. And I like what we discussed in this thread. The whole why thing, I think, in my mind, and maybe I just wanted to hear this, but the whole why comes back down to people. The products, the technologies, all of this that we build is to enhance our daily lives. When you really think about it, right? What we're delivering is for the sake of people. And if people are not involved, they're taken out of the equation, then I think all of this is useless. So that's, I think, the core idea here is it doesn't matter what new technologies are coming out or what old technologies we may or may not be throwing away. At the end of the day, people are what matter.
I think that's a great place to call it a wraps. And man, thank you so much. A huge thank you to all our special guests today for joining us on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet each of you and to listen to each of you. And thank you to all those who've tuned in. If you're interested in checking out more of Unlocking the Vault episodes, please visit DataVaultAlliance.com and select news. And don't forget, you've got the Worldwide Data Vault Consortium, and it's less than a month away. So if you'd like to join us out there, visit www.dvc.com for more information. I've been your host, Tricia McCain, and I hope you'll tune in again. Thank you.